In this video we're going to be fixing a safety issue that BMW themselves refused to fix. So before we get into things, make sure you give this video a like. It really does help me out. It shows your appreciation and hopefully it can raise some awareness to this issue. So what are we doing today then? So we're going to be working on my Bmw N52 engine in my Bmw 130i, and we're going to be tackling a very common problem, which is an official safety recall in North America, but for whatever reason it's not an official safety recall here in the UK yet. And it is regarding the CCV, or crankcase ventilation heater. So this thing can melt and cause a huge fire. So essentially what this CCV heater does is it heats up the air or the crankcase ventilation vapors going back into the intake manifold to prevent them from freezing. So you could say it is really only required on cars that are used in cold climates. However, it is pretty much used on all N52 engines. Now, why does this crankcase ventilation heater fail? Well, it's because it actually doesn't just heat up when the engine is running, it heats up when the ignition is on. So as long as the ignition is on, this thing will continue to just heat up. And obviously by design it's basically only just made up of plastic, and when this gets very hot, of course it will just melt, as what is seen right here. And as you can see, the wiring to it as well is not particularly thick, and the fuse that controls this CCV heater is a 20 amp fuse, so it takes quite a lot of amperage to actually blow the fuse that controls this. It also controls all of the O2 sensors as well. So if you notice that you have an engine management light on and you have all 4 O2 sensor faults, chances are this is your cause. Now, I have actually been in touch with BMW and the DVSA here in the UK themselves. They basically said that I need to take my car to BMW for some diagnostic work, may I add, at my expense, so that they can determine that this is the problem. It's a common problem worldwide. It's an official recall in the US. Obviously, this is the problem. I'm not going to take my car to BMW to pay their huge diagnostic fee when I can just fix this issue myself for a fraction of the price. So then what do we need to do to fix this issue itself? So, of course, we need to replace the CCV heater. We need to replace the wiring itself, because the original wiring, yeah, that got hot as well and that decided to melt. So I'm going to cut that back and install a piece of fresh wiring with the plug on, of course, and I'll reinstall this insulation as well, so you wouldn't even know. It would just look like a factory repair. And then of course we will need to replace that 20 amp fuse as well. I'm fairly sure the official recall does install an additional fuse, like an inline fuse. You basically have to trace back all the wiring to the junction box, and then you'll have to, you know, insert a fuse somewhere along that line. I'm not going to go through all that hassle. That's what they should do if they recall the car. I'm obviously just going to put it back to how it was at factory. Right then, let's get cracking. So if you want to know how to remove this CCV heater without removing your intake manifold, basically what you need to do is remove your drive belt, get the alternator out of the way. It's just held in by 4 Torx bolts, and then you should be able to get your hand in there to release those 2 Torx 25 bolts. Either use a small ratchet, 1/4 inch ratchet, or you could even use something like a Torx 25 Allen key. That'll probably help you get onto those screws a little bit easier. And obviously you just need to pop off that CCV hose that is on top of that heater, and you should be able to wiggle the heater itself out then. Obviously I've already removed mine, and it literally just came away in bits. So we just need to get the new one installed, get those 2 screws in place, get the pipe back on, and then we can repair the section of wiring then. Okay, so the CCV heater goes into the intake manifold like that. The heater, the CCV hose, drops directly down on top of it. It's a tight fit. Right then, so Don't know how well you're going to be able to see in here. But the replacement CCV heater is now in place. Also push that CCV hose back on as well. So next we need to start tackling this wiring. So I think what I'm going to do is just cut it off about here. As you can see, this part of the wiring isn't affected way back here. It's only really once we get to here. So I've well cut back the affected area, and I need to remove this insulation just so I can get to the wiring itself. Now essentially all we need to do is splice together these two sections of wiring and we should be all good. Okay, so I've went ahead and just stripped the two wires on the existing loom, ready for soldering, and I've also prepared the new section ready to go on. So of course strip them down to the bare copper. I've just slid some heat shrinking tubing over it. So now all I've got to do is let the soldering iron get up to temperature, and then we can solder this section in place. A little bit of flux. Okay, so probably not the cleanest solder joints you're ever going to see, but they'll be well strong enough. Plenty of solder on those. Now I'm going to slide the heat shrink over the joins. Okay, so I could only get the heat shrink tubes over around half of the joins, slightly too small. So I'm just going to tape them with some electrical tape. Basically do the same thing. There we are. That's that done. Hopefully we should be able to slide this tubing back in place. There we are. And now at the end of this I'm just going to wrap with some Tessa tape, which is this stuff right here. Right then, I guess we can get this connector plugged back in now. And with the CCV heater now plugged back in, we can get this vacuum pipe back onto the vacuum pump, and then we get the alternator back in position. And with the alternator now back in place, we can get the drive belt back on as well. Make sure it's seated in all the correct grooves, which it is. Perfect. Alright, I'm just going to get the airbox and this front air intake section back in place now. So then, airbox and air intake now all back in place. I plugged the MAF sensor back in as well. Now we'll head inside of the car, where I have already located the faulty broken fuse. I feel like earlier in the video I said it was a 20 amp fuse. It's not, it's a 30 amp fuse. As you can see, it's well and truly broke. Now you may be wondering, well, how do you even access this fuse? We have to access the fuse box behind the glove box inside of the car. You have to push these tabs in. There's one there and there's one there, and then you just have to disconnect the strut from the from the side of the glove box. It then should fold down, and if you look through to the back, you should then be able to see it. Now, which number fuse is it in our case? It is, we have a look on our chart, it's fuse number 38, I believe, which is one of the engine management fuses. So yeah, fuse number 38. And on here, fuse number 38, as you can see, is a 30 amp fuse, and then if we go over to where it is located just there, which, as you can see, I've already went ahead and removed it. So I have a couple of new fuses. I'm going to get one of these inserted, and then we should be all good. There we go then, new fuse in position. Now I'm just firing up my scan tool so we can get rid of that engine management light. As we can see, we have all of those O2 sensor heater faults, but if we clear them now, fault code's cleared. And if we fire the engine up, you can see that engine management light is gone, and the engine itself is running sweet. So that's a successful repair done. And well, there we go then, that's another problem fixed on this cheap BMW 130i. Danger averted, you could say. Like I said, there's many cases where things have gone a lot further than this. It's completely just melted that CCV heater, it's melted the intake manifold, and it's actually sent the car up in flames. Fortunately, that didn't happen. The fuse actually blew before it got to that stage. Now, of course, I've managed to fix this problem. I'm sure many of you are able to fix this problem, but it's something that we shouldn't have to do. It's a clear manufacturing defect. It's something that, you know, has been designed wrong. You know, it shouldn't have that CCV heater running off the same 30 amp fuse that those O2 sensor heaters are running off. It's just ridiculous. But yeah, I want to thank you all for watching anyway. Hopefully this video has been helpful. If anybody knows someone that works at BMW, or knows someone that maybe works at the DVSA here in the UK and can hopefully shed some light, or maybe push someone to make this a recall here in the UK like it is in North America, I don't know, try and make that happen please. But yeah, I want to thank you all for watching anyway. Give this video a like, leave a comment down below, subscribe if you have not already done so, and I will see you all in the next one.